All right. If we can go ahead and get everybody to get their seat, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. I'd like to go ahead and call this August 17th, 2015 regular meeting of Destin City Council to order. Before we rise to the invocation and pledge of allegiance, we do have an amazing honor that I asked him if he'd please help out tonight. Councilmember Marler will do the invocation, but we have the honor of Colonel Samuel Lombardo, Sam Lombardo, that's with us, that famous for saying if they don't have a flag, we'll make one. And World War II, and it's an amazing honor to have you here. And so if you want, once he does the invocation, if you come forward and hit the mic live so you can lead us in the pledge, it'd be an amazing honor. Yes, sir. So if you please rise to the invocation and pledge allegiance.
Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this day, and we ask you to watch over us as we make decisions for the city tonight. Let them be fair and just for everyone. Please watch over each and every one of us tonight. Get us safely to our families. Watch over our families. Watch over this great state, this great city, and this great country of ours, and keep our troops safe from harm, for they're what makes this country safe. We ask this in his name. Amen.
Colonel?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Colonel. Colonel, I would love to ask your age again, because I know you told me, because you play golf. How often do you play golf now?
2 weeks.
You will in 2 weeks? Keep swinging. One of your dear friends is Arnold Palmer, so it's good. We're honored you live in our community. Thanks for doing that. Okay, first up, we get to read a proclamation for Mr. Burns. If you'd come forward. Also, you're right here already. Destin Library 75th anniversary. If you please join me down front. Outstanding. That's pretty exciting. Our library is 75 years old. That's pretty good stuff. Whereas in 1940, our City of Destin proclamation that representing the Destin Library's 75th anniversary, whereas in 1940 in the small fishing village of Destin, a group of volunteers met to form a library board to serve as its residents, and whereas Mr. Al Fox of Syracuse, New York, shipped 200 books to Fred Zerby for a library, and whereas on August 21st, 1940, the library opened its doors in one room of the First Presbyterian Church on Calhoun Avenue, and whereas in 1943, Tyler Calhoun deeded property for the community center, which would also house a library, and whereas from 1940 through 1989, volunteers worked tirelessly to promote reading and keep the library well stocked with books, and whereas in 1989, the City of Destin took the library on as a city department, and whereas in 2003, the city opened the doors of an award-winning facility, and whereas there are now almost 10,000 Destin Library card holders. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Mel Ponder, on behalf of the Destin City Council, proclaim this Friday, August 21st, 2015, as the 75th anniversary of the Destin Library, and urge everyone to visit the library that day for an old-fashioned, ice cream sundae treat. Man, it's getting better already. Old-fashioned ice cream sundae celebration, social celebration. So done the 17th day of August 2015. Mayor Mel Ponder, to Ms. Urardi Burns, our director, an amazing leader.
I'd like to invite everyone here who has visited the library or has never visited the library to join us. We are celebrating the roots that started in 1940, 2 days before, if you can imagine in your mind, 2 days before London was being bombed by the Nazis. So that tells you how long ago it was and how we were not affected by the war yet here in Destin, but certainly they were affected 4 years later when Pearl Harbor was bombed. So we want to put everything in historical perspective. We want to honor those people who founded the library, and we want to honor all of the volunteers through the years that have helped keep it open. Mayor's mother-in-law, Martha Kilpatrick, was one of them. We had wonderful people. Can't name them here, but come and have some ice cream and then listen to Cheryl Jones playing some swing music from the 1940s between 4 and 5 o'clock.
Roddy, thank you again. You do an amazing job leading that. Has everybody in this room been to the library, the Destin Library? Is there people who have not been there besides William? I'll give you a pass. Is there anybody that's not been there? Man, you got to check this thing out. The architecture is amazing. It's beautiful. Great facility, great leadership. Thank you again. Appreciate it. And congratulations on your anniversary. Okay, item number 2, approval of minutes over the August 10th, 2015 City Council Budget Workshop.
Move to approve.
Okay, Ms. Trammell has the first. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Dixon. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, let's call the vote. Motion passed unanimous, 6-0. And tonight, if y'all have not noticed, Mr. Wood is taking his amazing young daughter to school at Alabama, and he's not here this evening. So we'll congratulate him here a little bit later. Okay, next up is if there's any member of the public who wish to speak on items 3 through 21, if you please come to the mic now. You will have a chance at the end of tonight's meeting as well if you want to address something else at the end of the evening. But if there's any member of the public that wishes to speak on items 3 through 21, please come forward now. Okay, seeing none, we'll move right along to the consent agenda. Motion, direction, council, one at a time, all 3.
Mayor, I move
Okay.
to do all 3.
Mr. Foreman, okay, you want the first on that, Mr. Foreman? Mr. Foreman has the first, Ms. Trammell, you want the second for all 3? Okay, is there any discussion? Yes, Ms. Trammell, is that for the motion? Okay, is there any other discussion? We're going to do all 3, 3, 4, and 5. First by Mr. Foreman, second by Ms. Trammell. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's call the vote. Motion passed unanimous, 6-0. Okay, no resolutions. Okay, scheduled presentations from the public. We have from Southern Light Small Cell Project, Mr. Eric Daniels. Okay. City staff, is there any lead into this or just presentation?
It's their presentation, and we'll lead into it on item number 18.
Great, thank you. And Mr. Daniels, you're aware of that item that we don't just have vote until item number 18? Yes, sir. Okay, great. Please proceed. And if you could please push the button on the and just state your name for the record. Great.
Name's Eric Daniels with Southern Light. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of the company. Ah, very good. Look at that. I have no idea what this button does. There we go. All right. I think we'll get through this. Yeah, my name's Eric Daniels. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Southern Light. Southern Light's a telecommunications carrier. Specifically, we're what we call a last mile telecommunications carrier, meaning that we are on the long journey of trying to build fiber to directly into as many businesses and government facilities, wireless carrier type facilities as we can in our operating area. So if you remember back in 2000, there were a lot of really big telecommunications carriers that were building the backbone of the internet from LA to Jacksonville, and they would have come through this area, probably not through Destin, but once they got done building it, most of them went bankrupt, and everybody still had really slow internet access. That was because they basically built an interstate system without a lot of off-ramps, and that's what we specialize in, is building the off-ramps so that the connection directly into your facility is as fast as it would be at any point on the backbone of the internet. So we focus specifically on business. So if anyone wants fiber to their home, I'm not your guy. We're very proud of the fact that we have an all optical network. We don't do anything with copper facilities. We're the 8th largest privately held carrier of our type in the country. Like I said, we're headquartered in Mobile, so we're not very far away. We've put close to $250 million in the ground around here. We've built about 5,200 miles of fiber, and we build about another 100 miles every month. We have 208 employees. They're not all in Mobile. They're scattered throughout that 5,200 miles of our network, which traditionally has been here along the Gulf Coast. So, and one of the things that's very unique about us is we try to build for the future when we build our networks. This is a look at the type of customers we have. Our 3 main focuses are other telecommunications carriers, be they the wireless guys like Verizon Wireless, who's the reason we're talking here tonight, Sprint, T-Mobile, AT&T Wireless. I serve all those guys, as well as the big landline carriers We also do a lot for the government. The Department of Defense is one of our biggest customers, but we can reach down and serve, you know, the smallest little municipalities that you can find out there. So we've also got a lot of pretty big enterprise customers as well. If you notice, last time I was here, someone was talking about the implications of Airbus. We helped recruit Airbus to come to Mobile. It was one of the main things they wanted to see was, do you have a fiber optic infrastructure that can handle the kind of capacity that we need? And we absolutely do. And so do you here in Destin, which is a pretty key takeaway, I would think. So, specifically here in Destin, like I said, the main customers we serve are the wireless guys, some of the other landline carriers. We serve Sacred Heart, several of the little restaurants, and there's some even some churches. Our network is getting that pervasive that we're able to reach out and really serve small business type customers. So the Department of Defense is pretty key for us in this specific area, and I'm sure you all understand why. And we've built about 14 miles through Destin, and we're currently engaged in a pretty major expansion throughout the Panhandle as well. We're built contiguously in protected rings from basically Lafayette, Louisiana, to Panama City, and we're starting to enlarge that ring to encompass our Tallahassee network as well. So the reason I'm talking here tonight, like I said, we support the wireless carriers in more than just what we call optical transport. We have some pretty bright guys who understand the way they work and the challenges that they have. And we were approached by Verizon about 2 years ago to consider helping them out with a strategy to build these little things they call small cell, right? Some of the first ones of these were manufactured about 2 years ago. The Verizon guys got their hands on it, and we helped them put it in the French Quarter district of New Orleans, so as well as the St. Charles areas. So what these things are, they're not cell towers. They are a part of the wireless network, but they're kind of like if you think of the actual cell towers as like an octopus with the head being what you know as a cell tower. These guys are kind of like little tentacles that reach out and help cover the areas that the main cell tower cannot. And if something ever happens to that main cell tower, these things stop functioning. So. But that's the term small cell is just a generic term for these type of radios that you can put up in locations to cover a really small area, you know, anywhere that people cluster. So it really is kind of I say a laser target. It doesn't have anything to do with lasers other than the fact that it runs across an optical network. You know, that's what you have to make these things work. They have to be connected on a fiber optic cable back to the main cell site. But you see, unlike a regular cell site, which can reach out to about 5 miles or so, even further for the ones that are reaching out in the Gulf, these things can really only reach a couple hundred yards. So they're trying to solve one of two problems with them: either A, coverage, meaning how many bars you got on your phone, or 2, capacity. I don't know how many of you ever experienced a phenomenon where you actually have 4 or 5 bars on your phone and can't make a call. That's what happens when that many people get clustered around in an area. And that's what these things do, is they help cover a very small area and offload that traffic from the major macro tower that they're coming back to. So this is the technology that's coming. Destin is one of the first cities in the country to experience this thus far. They've started to deploy them in the big NFL cities, New York City, LA, Chicago. But really, Destin is by far one of the first cities of its size that is getting these kind of systems that we're trying to put in for them here. So, and until your kids and grandkids stop using their cell phones the way they do today, and I think you all know they're glued to the things, the amount of traffic that these cell phones are going to generate, and the importance to the public of trying to get them to operate as best you can, it's not going away anytime soon. So that's let's see. Here is if you can see the red circles there, this is a chart I put together of the amount of radio frequency that's available for the wireless carriers to work with. That's really not a whole lot of frequency out there that they operate in. And so since nobody's making any new frequencies, you know, they have to come up with smarter ways to deploy their network. You know, those frequencies cost them several $billions. And so the solution is to get these antennas closer to the end users. And really what they're trying to solve is more, it's not like they're trying to microwave the end users anymore. They're actually coming out with lower power systems. What they're trying to solve is the capabilities of your cell phone to reach back up to the macro site and be heard around everybody else who's stuck in traffic out on Highway 98, you know. So each one of these systems can pump through about 50,000 calls a day, as opposed to the main cell tower, which can do about 500,000. So, and it's you know, I mean, we think it's one of the best ways for the wireless carriers to solve the problems that I'm sure each of you have experienced while still trying to deal with, you know, what do you do with public space out there. So the other thing it gives you is there's a significant enhancement to public safety from the standpoint of the E911 capability that's inherent in your cell phones. Because these things cover such a smaller area with such greater refinement, the ability to locate that end user who is experiencing whatever is causing them to call E911 is a lot greater enhanced than it is coming off of one of the larger cell towers. So there really is a significant public safety component to this. So what we put in these locations is it needs some type of pole, platform, existing antenna if there is one. We put a radio out there and equipment cabinet and the antenna specifically dedicated to these guys to cover that specific area. And a lot of the antennas we put out there are very directionally focused. The first ones that we're trying to work on here in this area are specifically engineered around the area of where the crab trap is down there. And I'll give you a look at what those things look like today. That's one of the locations right there. And here's another one. And that one's kind of in a curve. So we've been working with the city staff to try and find a solution that everybody, or at least the vast preponderance of people, can be happy with. You know, one of the things that we've come up with is adding lights onto those poles that will make it useful for the city. We've also looked at trying to conform to a standard that I think you're very comfortable with the way your street lights are further out. In that specific area, there's already 4 different kinds of lights. But we've also been talking to, we had a meeting before we came here with Destin water users. They have a lot of facilities that the city staff put us on to where they have antennas out there that are pretty well hidden. So we're going to attempt to find a way that we can work with them on future deployments as well. You know, there may be some instances where we can work with private property owners as well. But it's much easier for the wireless guys to engineer based on public right-of-way, you know, because you never know until you get there and you've got everything worked out with a private property owner that, you know, the locations they may have for you just aren't going to work. So it's a lot easier for these guys when they're trying to figure out their coverage, how to do it based on the use of public right-of-way. So these are examples of some of the locations where we've put some of these in already. That's in the Garden District of New Orleans on the left-hand side, and we've put several of these things in Point Clear as well, around the Grand Hotel. We try to match what we see out there. If there's a menagerie of things, it's hard to match. That's, you know, we understand the staff has what we would consider some pretty reasonable recommendations of how to do these things going forward if they are going to be on public right-of-way. So there's a couple more that we put on Okaloosa Island, and when you come over the bridge from Fort Walton, look on your right-hand side, try to find it. It's going to be a challenge for you to find that in the existing infrastructure that's there. So, and I think, let's see.
I think that's it.
I think there was one more slide. Okay.
That's all we had, at least.
Okay, got it. All right. We'll get enough. Well, you know, I wanted to give you guys, there were a lot of questions last time that we didn't have the opportunity to answer. So I wanted to try and cover those tonight. As far as
Maybe is that the slide you're thinking of?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Okay.
So this shows one of the ways that we could re-engineer what's there to make it more appealing. You know, that's the specific kind of light that you have. I think what, you know, the real question becomes, how high can you go with these things? They need to be ideally around 30 feet high. If you come shorter than that, then you're going to need more of them. So the real question is, do you want more of these things out there, or do you want fewer? The other thing we could do with what's existing there is we can put a base on it. We can basically build a base out of foam to make it look just like the ones you've got in some of the other parts of town as well that you're trying to standardize on. So, are there any questions specifically to the technology and how this will help the citizens?
We do have a few questions.
Sure.
For City Council, just be reminded that this is an item number 18 coming up later, so if it's something that's pertaining to his presentation, please fire away. I don't want to get into the discussion on number 18 yet. Mr. Braden, you're first.
Thank you, Mayor. Is it a true statement that this small tower can handle the calls because it's going through fiber optics and not through?
That's correct. If the concern is that everybody's going to be out there trying to do this, well, you know, everybody's going to need about $250 million or more worth of fiber optic cable in the ground to be able to do this. The real challenge of getting up isn't the pole. The real challenge is having the fiber optic backbone in place that's already interconnected to all these cell towers out there, which is what we have.
So this can't be achieved by the large towers already in place because it's going through
Correct.
frequency and not the fiber optics?
Well, so, you know, the problem you have with the large towers that are out there today, if you think about generically, they're broken up into 3 sectors, right? And those sectors are overwhelmed by the number of people that are within that specific sector. You know, maybe you can get better coverage in January, but when it comes to July down here at Crab Trap, it's going to be a lot harder. So, you know, that's what we call that's not a coverage issue, it's a capacity issue. Meaning your cell phone can have 5 bars out there because the radiation is reaching you, but the processing power of that base station sitting back at the macro tower is overwhelmed by all the other radiation coming back from all the other cell phones. So it's basically, you know, a lot of people shouting in a room. You can't hear anybody.
How does this help if it's going back to the same tower?
So yeah, so what it does is these small cell systems concentrate you know, that coverage into a much smaller area. It allows the main cell tower back there, they'll basically take the antennas and they'll either point them up and over that specific area, or they'll point them down so they're not focused in that same area, which the effect is twofold. One, you get better coverage in that specific area that you're trying to handle because there's so many people clustered around in there. And also it makes the big cell tower that it operates off of a heck of a lot more efficient. It's not trying to cover that area where all the noise is coming from.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. That's all I have.
No problem. Thanks, Mr. Braden. Mr. Dixon?
Yes, thank you. Is this system kind of like a voting system where if that cell tower is busy, it would go to this system or anything like that?
It totally takes the place of the cell tower coverage in that area.
Okay, you know what I'm talking about in a voting system?
No, I do not.
Okay, basically, whatever tower it is you're hitting is going to determine whether or not you stay on that tower.
You're talking about the way the cells switch.
And I dealt with it with VHF radios
Gotcha.
and things like that in my past life. So it's not anything like that.
It is not. I mean, when you're in the coverage area, that small antenna is what is serving you. And the capacity you're going to get off of that, from a data standpoint, you know, your cell phone can pump through about 45 meg a second.
All right, and I heard you mention this was good for like a few hundred yards. Is that correct? That's right. Wow. So that small of an area.
That's right. So, you know, it's not the cellular networks themselves are an intricate dance of making all kind of different solutions work. This is the solution you employ where you have a whole lot of people in a relatively small area.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Ms. Trammell?
I'm no mathematician, but if you can, the cell tower is 50,000 calls a day, and the main cell tower is 500,000 calls a day, then it seems to me like you're gonna need 100 of these to max out the tower. Is that about right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So far we have 2. What's the plan?
Yeah, there's probably about 30 more that they want to put in this general area. You know, not just within Destin, but a large preponderance of those are within Destin.
So then we've maxed out our tower just about. When
They'll-
you look at the ones that aren't on it versus the others.
They will spend the money to make sure, you know, it really becomes a function of the brains inside the cell tower. They'll keep upgrading the brains inside the cell tower if they can get the
Well,
radiation
that's
coverage.
to be seen later.
Well, it's a function of, there's equipment sitting in there with a lot of empty slots, and they will populate that with cards that are, you know, basically mini computers.
Yeah, because we've been complaining for the 2 years y'all have been negotiating that we haven't been getting power or more, but, okay, all right, thank you, I understand.
Thank you, Mr. Trammell. Mr. Foreman?
Thank you, sir. I have a better understanding of what you do.
Okay.
My question is this. I think our concern from the standpoint of the city is that we'll see a proliferation of different companies coming in, putting in their towers in
Right.
different locations. As I understand what you're telling me here, in order to do that, they would have to hire a company just like yours to connect their towers too.
Yes, sir.
So that, and you're kind of the predominant company.
I've got almost all of
installing-
them on my network.
So you could end up, say, doing towers for T-Mobile and for Verizon and
They're next.
any of the others. So
Yes, sir.
So long as we deal with you, you're the only one that's doing what you do.
I think we're definitely the earliest.
Yeah.
And we've got a head start on anyone in the industry in being, you know, a little bit bleeding edge on things. The antenna systems that we put out there are, have multiple ports on them, so we can serve multiple carriers off of the same pole, if that's a concern.
That's
So,
a concern.
yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Foreman. Ms. Ramswell?
Thank you. I believe one of my takeaways from our prior meeting was that the availability of these towers is one thing, but actually working in conjunction with the cell phone carriers and working out agreements that they would use it is quite another. Have you been in contact with any of the carriers that service this area in terms of how they can work with you all to increase our service?
Yes, ma'am. And a lot of it has to do with what the carrier's priorities are as to where they want to spend their money, you know. Some of them have all the money to do anything you could imagine, you know. So if you're Verizon, you're going to spend money on deploying something like this, and you're going to go buy AOL the next day. Some of the other carriers don't quite have that kind of same capital ability that maybe the big guys do. But every time we put one of these up, we have a team of guys who go and let all the other wireless carriers know where we've just put one up. And then they're what they call their RF engineers, the guys who design, you know, the wireless component of it, frantically run to their desk and plug in exactly where we put these things and figure out if it's something they'll be able to take advantage of quickly.
So I guess at this point, then, there have not been any communications with them saying this is what we're looking at doing? Are you guys on board?
We are. We're
You
absolutely
are.
saying that. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, fantastic.
It just
That's
becomes a function of
vital.
whether they've got the money to be able to do that, you know.
Okay. And, sorry, one final question. Is that fairly common for them to go ahead and jump on board, or are they going to say, well, he's putting up his towers, now I want to put up my own towers?
We're a neutral carrier. We serve everybody, and they know that. You know, these guys will beat each other up publicly, and then behind the scenes, they'll do all kind of deals to help each other's networks along
Okay,
the way.
great. Thank you, I appreciate
that's-
it.
You know, they're pretty harsh publicly, but, you know, and then the end comes, you know, what do we all have the money to do? And, you know, so.
Thank you, Mr. Ramswell. Mr. Marler?
In regards to the putting the lights on the towers.
Yes, sir.
What would be you said your towers are 30 foot tall. difference in the proportionate is that going to be?
So your average ones are at about 20 feet. And what we're showing in that is just, a sample where the lights would be at 20 feet.
So the lights will be at 20 feet and there'd be 10 foot more of your pole sticking up?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. That was my only question.
Thank you, Mr. Marler. Any other discussion or questions, council?
I think that gets more into what the staff wants to talk about.
Yeah, no, there's some stuff I have, but I think it comes up down the line, so. Mr. Daniels, thank you for your time, appreciate
Thanks,
your
sir.
presentation.
Thank
Absolutely.
you.
And you may be, I know it's not public hearing under the next item, but in case there's more questions that come up, are you available to answer questions?
We're happy to answer any other questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels, appreciate it very much. Okay, next up, project reports from comments from mayor and council. First up, Mr. Braden.
I don't have anything tonight, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Braden. Ms. Ramswell?
Thank you very much. I just got back from Florida League of Cities, as did a couple of other folks up here, and we had a great legislative session. Each of the committees with the League of Cities voted on 2 priorities, which were presented to the membership and were approved. And these will be legislative priorities that we will be lobbying for and advocating for with our legislators come the legislative session in the beginning of 2016. So it was a great event. I think we all had a really nice time. It's always great to get out and network and sort of see what other folks are doing and what great ideas we can share and they can share with us. The main thing I wanted to discuss tonight is something that we've actually discussed here and there and in different forms for quite some time. Obviously, the number of tourists that we have coming to Destin continues to increase, which is great, but with that comes obviously increasing numbers and increasing numbers of incidents. And, you look back and in 2013, because of the rise of incidents, the fire district had to put up a jet ski and a guard tower to try to control matters out there and ensure somebody was there to help folks that would need it. 2014, things continued to rise to the point where we actually held a town hall to discuss Crab Island and what was happening out there and how can we better make it safer for everyone. And that actually culminated in us making a recommendation to the county to put in a safety corridor. And that is something that they have actually been looking into quite a bit and is supposed to be on their agenda in September to discuss implementation and where it would be and all the little details that are involved in that. Even back in April, we had talked with the fire district, we talked with the sheriff's office, and how can we be proactive? And I personally had gone and spoken in April at some point about, can we get some sort of funding to help increase the patrols that we have on the beach, patrol Crab Island, get more sheriff's officers out there. And what ended up happening was, look what's happened this summer. We've had an increase in incidents, there have been drownings. We had a man be paralyzed because he was trying to do the right thing and help somebody. And it's really become a safety hazard. And all we want is for folks to come here and have a great time and then come back next year and have another great time. But right now, I think the fire district is doing a wonderful thing. They decided on their own, we got to get a fireboat out there. We've got to ensure the safety of the folks that are coming here. And so what they did was they got a fireboat out in Crab Island. It's got an operator, it's got a paramedic, and it's got a lifeguard. And in 6 days, this is 2 weekends, 3 days apiece, they did 30 assists and 10 saves. That's 6 days. And it really makes you scratch your head and think how many folks have been out there rescuing each other, saving each other, and we don't even know about it. And so, this past weekend, obviously there was some rain, but they did add to those numbers this weekend. They added 5 saves and another assist. That's 9 days. You've got 15 saves, 31 assists. Now those numbers are frightening, but then you look at it in terms of, wait a minute, these are preventions. Thank goodness we had people out there. And so I really wanted to bring your attention to what the district has been doing, because it's absolutely the right thing. Unfortunately, they don't have the funds to try to do this on their own. You know, we obviously, as a city, we budget for our permanent population of 12,000 and something, not for 60, 80, 100,000, which we see in the summer. So funding becomes an issue. And I just wanted to kind of implant that in everyone's heads as we move forward. And we thank the fire district for what they've done, because they have probably and most definitely saved some lives these past few weekends, because we have been exceptionally busy, and it's just been, you know, just troubling to hear the numbers, but also a blessing to know that those have been preventions.
Mr. Rams, I'd like to honor, we have Chief Sasser with us from the Destin Fire Control District. You mind stand up, Chief, so everybody can get to see you? Thank you for coming tonight. We appreciate that. And Board Member Tommy Green. Thank you, Tommy, for coming. Appreciate it very much. We're honored to have you here.
Certainly, and I guess it's also a really good time to actually mention that we are honored to have a tremendous beach safety team. They actually just won the national championships for small divisions of 100 employees or less. So we have a phenomenal group of men and women in place, ready to get out there and do their jobs and save folks. So we have the assets, we need the financial assets. And, you know, how we move forward with that, I'll leave up to fellow council and what we can do in the future. But I did want to just make those comments and give a genuine thank you to the district and the commission and everyone involved, and of course the sheriff's office. I saw Captain Pago in here earlier. So, and that's what I have for tonight.
Well, I want to piggyback that a second, because right, wrong, or indifferent, people see Crab Island as Destin. And Chief Sasser and Mr. Green did not have to make this, you know, concerted effort to say we're going to do something. You know, at the end of the day, I believe that our moment and our history and time will be remembered for what we do with what's been given to us. And I appreciate his expanding his mind to look even outside the normal geographical boundaries of Destin and say, hey, people are getting hurt out there. And so they put resources and assets literally on the water to do something about it. And so, because, you know, when people complain, they assume that's part of Destin already, you know. And so you stepped out and did something, and I hope that the funding comes in you need, because you deserve it. When Ms. Ramswell, she's right on, that day, safety was the #1 priority out there that we talked about, among other things, but safety came out resoundingly clear. And as mayor, I appreciate you doing that. And I told Mr. Green this past week, let me know what we need to do to make sure that we can support you getting that funding. I think it's important. So, because again, they're going to point the finger to us, and you stepped up. So thanks. Absolutely. Mr. Braden, is it about? Did you want to say something?
Yes, sir. You mind if I make the motion?
Sure. About this.
I'll make that motion now?
What's that?
Yes, sir. About
Okay.
this?
Sure.
I'd like to make the motion. I move that the city council support the Destin Fire Control District request for $49,289.53 in funding from the Okaloosa County Tourist Development Department to provide rescue services to Crab Island.
So you're
I'll
just saying, okay, we have first by Mr. Braden, second by Ms. Trammell. Basically, we're getting support to support the TDC funding them, essentially.
Yes.
Okay. First by Mr. Braden, second by Ms. Trammell. We have discussion. No, we don't. Is there any discussion, Mr. Foreman?
Yeah, I didn't hear the full motion.
You want to read it again, Mr. Braden?
I move that the city council support the Destin Fire Control District's request for $49,289.53 in funding from the Okaloosa County Tourist Development Department to provide rescue services to Crab Island.
So
That's
basically,
okay.
we're going to provide a letter of support endorsing their efforts and for the TDC to fund it, essentially. Is that right, Mr. Braden? Paraphrase?
Yes, sir.
Okay. First by Mr. Braden, second by Ms. Trammell. Ms. Ramswell? Oh, sorry, forgive me. Mr. Dixon, you're up first.
Yes, thank you. Should this motion pass, and I fully believe it will, I'll do everything in my power to see, or hope to see that this goes through the Tourist Development Council as a representative. I would, however, appreciate if we could have the mayor there on the day of this, and I think it would carry some more weight. So.
Sure, honored to. Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Ms. Ramswell?
I obviously am very much in favor of this, and I could not make the motion because I am an employee of the fire district part-time and teach the junior lifeguard. So thank you so much for making that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Ramsdell. Ms. Trammell, I'm so sorry. I saw the light. I thought it was for your motion. Forgive me.
That's okay, not a problem. I just, I had button problems last week.
No, you're
and
good.
I've
I
had them
saw
already
that.
tonight, so, who knows?
You're good.
I am in support of this. One of the things that I guess, Mr. Dixon, maybe you can carry to, because you're a former fire person yourself and you know all the people over there, and Chief Sasser's sitting here. I've personally assisted in two supports, I'll say, in people swimming from the bridge next to the the Coast Guard station over to Crab Island, and they cannot make it. Somehow we've got to say no swimming across those channels. We have a big pontoon boat, and we just sat there and floated beside them because boats were coming, didn't even see them, they didn't have a dive flag, they didn't have anything indicating they were swimming. So somehow we need to look at, and I don't know, I guess we go to the county with this one, but look at restricting swimmers from the beach over to Crab Island, because it is just terribly dangerous. Nobody looks anymore. But I think along with, and I know this past weekend my husband was telling me that I think the fireboat escorted a few people over there because they didn't swim together. They, some were better swimmers than others, and it was quite an obstacle. And I thought, well, they're taking up a whole lot of time from what they could be doing for other people, just watching some people who don't realize how strong that current is to try to get over there. So anyway, that was just a thought that I think we need to look at, that would help tremendously with a lot of these near deaths and deaths that we've been having from drowning lately. Thank you, that's it, and I do support the measure.
Thank you, Ms. Trammell. Mr. Casella?
Yeah, just quickly on that, we have, with the county, along with the sheriff's department and the FWC, as it relates to the no vessel exclusion area, and there's very limited things you can do in the waterway, and they've worked with us to accomplish it. And I know the county, as Councilor Ramswell had mentioned, it's got it scheduled for September, October to get it scheduled. So, but prohibiting swimming is very, very difficult. But the FWC, the state of Florida, has been very helpful in telling us what we can do. Because remember, it started out to be kind of an emergency area. They said you can't do that, but you can exclude vehicles, and that's in the works, and that should probably won't help for this season, but will definitely help for next season.
Thank you, Mr. Casella. Okay, Mr. Dixon.
Yes, the $49,000, is it to be for this year's coverage or next year's coverage?
16, right?
It's for next year, and it's Friday through Sunday.
Mr. Sasser, I'm sorry, I've got to catch you on the mic. I apologize. Do you mind answering that question? Thank you. I'm sorry, Chief. Sorry about that.
Of course, normally you wouldn't have a problem hearing me.
Picking you up on the mic.
It's Friday through Sunday through the 100 days of summer. Similar to the program we're running this year. We finished out the year. After the incident where the gentleman broke his neck trying to perform a rescue, that's when we put them out. We did it on the weekends. We feel the weekends is when the most populous, the most people are there. It doesn't mean that things can happen Monday through Thursday, but that's additional funding, and we felt we needed to start somewhere. And if we could try to cover the largest group of people on the Friday through Sunday, that would be the way to go. So this funding would just be to cover the Friday through Sunday.
Okay, but in next year's budget?
Next
beginning in
year's
October.
budget, yes, sir.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, in 16.
Chief, one quick question before you go down.
I just knew I had
what day of the week?
answer that whenever I got there.
Oh, yeah.
What day of the week is July 4th on next year?
I haven't looked.
If it's a Monday through Thursday type thing, you add that
We'll
to
be
your...
there on July 4th.
Okay, perfect.
We plan for that.
Okay, perfect, good.
Yeah, the same thing as Memorial Day and Labor Day, and July 4th is the other day that we plan on.
Okay, Ms. Trammell?
I would even support you being out there on a Thursday for fireworks.
Oh, yes, oh, I know what you're talking about, yes, ma'am.
I mean, it's crazy after that and right before that. It gets
Yes, ma'am.
very,
I can hear the boats from my house. When
Yep.
the fireworks are over, so there's a lot of them out there.
so, all right, thank you.
Ms. Trammell. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate
Yes,
it very
sir.
much. Okay, we have a first by Mr. Brady and a second by Ms. Trammell. Any further, Ms. Ramsdell, were you recusing yourself? Was that what you were saying earlier? Are you going to still vote?
I believe I need to recuse myself.
Okay. Mr. Miller, is that correct?
That's a call of the councilman, and she seems to understand the issues.
Okay, good deal. All right, first by Mr.
She's announced she'll abstain because she's an employee.
Got it. First by Mr. Braden, second by Ms. Tramble. Any other discussion? See none, let's call the vote. Ms. Tramble, there you go. Okay, motion passed unanimous, 5-0, with one abstaining.
And for the
Thank you.
record, the clerk's presenting you with a declaration of voting conflict.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Thank you, Ms. Ramswell. Is there anything else under your item?
That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ramswell. Again, Chief, thanks for coming out. Mr. Green, thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Next up, Mr. Dixon.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Mr. Foreman?
I have one thing, Mayor. As they said, we came back from the League of Cities. I serve on the Finance Committee for the city, and I did make contact with several other cities, several representatives while I was there, and they're very much interested in the issue of the resort tax and or the bed tax. And so we plan on getting together and coming up with some recommendations for the legislative year to see if we can get some legislation that'll give us some relief on the on the financing of our visitors, security and safety, and Crab Island and the whole works. So they're very much in favor of pursuing that, so I'll stay in touch with them and we'll do some good there.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Foreman. Mr. Marler?
Just one thing, Mayor, I'd like to have the city staff at any time that's convenient, bring us back with an update of what's going on with Noriega Point, where we're at. I've got a lot of people asking me when it's going to be shovel ready, what the final plans turned out to be. I know we submitted 2 sets of plans, or wanted 2 sets of plans made, and I know that the state has a lot more to do with it, but.
Yeah, let me give you a quick update. Just, we actually had a update at Rotary last week. The state's in the final stages of scope of services with Taylor Engineering to do the design for the hardening as well as the recreational amenities enhancements to Noriega Point. So they're taking the previous plans and then do phase 1, which would be the hardening, and subsequently phase 2 would be the recreational amenities. The NERDA money is sitting with the state of Florida. They're anticipating starting sometime in 2016 with a hardening. So that's in the works and proceeding. So, and then after the hardening, then they would do the recreational amenities. So that's all in the works, and it will be a state project administered by the Department of Environmental Protection.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Marler. Mr. Wood, of course, is out. Ms. Trammell?
It just shows the arms of government move very slowly. Thank you. Tonight I asked staff to look into some standards for our mobile homes in Destin, and I'm trying to find it here. It's not an automatic go-to here. One of the things I was concerned about was an email that we got, all the council got, regarding mobile homes in Destin, and their understanding as homeowners that when mobile homes were removed that they would not be replaced, that they were grandfathered in, and come to find that they were not grandfathered in. So I've asked staff to bring up some of the standards for these mobile homes in Destin and let us know what they are, and do they still meet our vision and our priorities of being a world-class beach and fishing family-friendly resort. And I thought for a long time that they were affordable housing, and I'm finding out that people are paying just as much for those as they are for apartments. So that's why I'd like the council at a future date to consider whether or not these still fit in our criteria for a world-class community or not. So that's where I am at this point.
Yeah, if you recall, there was a young lady that came probably two maybe 2 or 3 months ago and asked a question over on Cyber, that she was led to believe by her real estate agent that if a mobile home was removed, it could not be replaced. And we subsequently researched that, and we provided you with a copy of the land use development code that basically says as long as they're replaced within 6 months of them being pulled off, that is allowed under our code. So we can't really preclude those from being replaced so long as they do it within the 6 months. So if that's something you'd like us to look at, we'd be more than willing to do that. But right now, the code is pretty specific. The unintended consequences of changing it, that some of these mobile homes can get pretty ratty and would stay there an awful long time if in fact, you know, they knew that if they got pulled off, they couldn't be replaced. So, and then we do have some things in the building code that can deal with that from an unsafe structures, but it's still, you know, when I was a kid, there was mobile homes in an agricultural community that I grew up in, and I remember thinking as a kid, those mobile homes would eventually have to go away. Some 40 years later, 50 years later, they're still there. So, you know, they can last an awful long time, you know, because it basically can be fixed. So it's a policy issue. If you want us to tweak this code, change this code, we can do that. But right now, it talks about 6 months from if they're removed, and they can be replaced. And as Councilor Trammell said, some of the rents currently in this rental market are pretty pricey. So,
Well, and I read that the average life expectancy is 50 years. I said 50 years down the road, do we want trailers in the city of, you know, mobile homes in the city of Destin? That was just a question I asked. And if we're asking Canaan to go to all the trouble to help brand us and help make us what we really want to be, then I just wondered if that was a piece that wanted to be in there. That's my question. But if you could bring it back, I'd appreciate it, and we'll all consider it, and we'll just determine what we want to do with it.
We actually have two council members have questions, if that's
Oh,
okay.
okay.
Yeah. First up, Mr. Marler.
I just actually had a comment. First off, considering what was there before, and also considering that a gentleman lost his life in that particular trailer park, I know what they're talking about. At least it looks a whole lot better now than it did before, because all those are more modern-looking trailers. But I do understand, and I mean, we're in a real hurricane-prone area, so trailers are just not the way to go anymore.
Thank you, Mr. Marler. Mr. Braden?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, right now there's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath townhome on Airport Road for $12.95, pet friendly. And those trailers on Cyber, the new ones are $13.95, $1,400 a month. So they're not cheap. Can we, when we're changing this, can we change it where if that property is sold, that if that trailer is pulled off, whatever we come back with, they got a replacement 30 days, or they can't replace it at all. That way the people that have the trailers there now, you know, they've got the 6 months or whatever to put a new one there. 'Cause I hate to throw them under the bus, the people that own them now, that, you know, hey, if you want to get a new home, you can't, you got to build a house there. But if it's sold, then that starts applying at that point.
Yeah, that's generally the way it works. I'm not trying to cut anybody out of their income right now. What I'm saying is, in 50 years, do they still fit? That's all I'm saying. We'll have to determine how long, you know, 20, 30, 40 years are going to give them until we say no more or whatever. It's not going to be, or my plan was not for it to be a sudden, you know, no more. We'll see what happens when staff brings us back what they bring us back. We'll have to make that determination at that time. So.
I'd like a little bit more direction than just bringing something back. I mean, I'm not being mean, I just don't know what
All right,
you're looking for.
what I need is the current ordinance.
We've given you the current ordinance.
Well, it didn't come up on my computer, so, the current ordinance and how you would recommend that we change it to look toward phasing out trailers from, or mobile homes, not trailers, but mobile homes, from the areas we currently have them in, because the areas we currently have them in have nice brick houses all the way around them. you know, that we're trying to develop the neighborhood and upgrade the neighborhood, and if we keep putting trailers in, then I think it's going to, or mobile homes, it's going to bring the property values down for those people that are building homes and townhouses and apartments and other things around there.
Yeah, the best way to do that is that if the home gets removed, it can't be replaced.
That's the way to phase them out.
That's, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that, if that's the direction, that's an easy, we can bring that back if that's the consensus of the council.
Okay, I've got 4 others that are now, so let me go through these. Mr. Marler first.
One thing I think we need to distinguish is mobile home, manufactured home, site versus, you know, and I think Mr. Casella was here when we had the houses built off-site, but they had permanent foundations. So we need to have that also distinguished in there so that we know what we're actually talking about, because that was a bone of contention a couple of years ago.
Thank you, Mr. Marler. Next up, Mr. Dixon.
Yes, I worry about the language that would say that basically if you pull them out, you can't be replaced. I think what would happen with that is that we would have families living in something substandard after a period of time. So I think that needs to be thought out. But how many trailers, how many units of these do we have? Does anybody have that number?
I would speculate, but I'm guessing probably less than 50. And if there was more than 50, it'd probably be 50 to 100 throughout the whole community. There's not that many left, but
I would think it's less than 40, but anyway, can we try to get a count on that and see how much we're dealing with, how much property we're dealing with, please?
we can, I think we can assess how many may be out there in the Destin.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dixon. Mr. Foreman.
Yeah, I think this is kind of an interesting situation here because once they take them off the wheels, they're no longer trailers, number one. Plus, I recall if you go to your land use map and other things, and they're in the code at the present time. So here we are trying to finish up on this one iteration of changes, and we're talking 5 years down the road. So I'm not too sure how much progress we're going to make on it in the amount of time we're talking about. But that's the one thing, and then I think we've got a situation where, as Councilman Trammell said, is that these are not inexpensive anymore. When they replace them, they're replacing them with something that looks very much like the inside of your own house, and or even better. And so they're not necessarily, from that standpoint, a living standard problem on it. But then you look around in certain areas of the town here, and you've got actual houses that look worse than the trailers. So it's code enforcement per se. It's how you approach, you know, doing things like that I think we're involved in here. That's my comment.
Thank you, Mr. Foreman. Ms. Ramswell?
Thank you, Mayor. My comments actually were in line with Councilman Marler's in terms of trying to distinguish between what differentiates manufactured home from RV, from mobile home to trailer. So I would ask that we keep that into consideration. I mean, are all those various entities in that space? They're not. So,
I'm talking about specific space.
So anywhere. Okay. Because, I mean, perhaps to a lay person, those are almost interchangeable to me. Other than a trailer, just by logic, I would assume you have to pull a trailer, but can't you take the wheels off the others as well? I mean,
We can give you definitions of mobile homes, manufactured homes, you know, prefab homes. I mean, there's prefab homes in Indian Bayou. I mean, they were brought in on trailers, put together. You wouldn't know it by looking at it today because it was all prefab. And as Mr. Marler said, we have a number of homes that were built 7, 8 years ago that were basically brought in on trailers. But you look at them today, they look really close like their home. So I think this is specifically issue of mobile homes, which is not, you know, that was at one point on wheels, aluminum, that kind of thing. But we'll bring you back some things that would grandfather, amortize these out, and then see, you know, we'll do it in draft form, so if it's something you like, then you can tell us we're on the right target. If we're not, then we can subsequently adjust it, so.
And this goes along with, I think, some of what we've heard all over the board is the standards for the exterior, just like our homes. I mean, there's some that I have driven by, and I honestly thought they were condemned, abandoned, there are holes in, but lo and behold, people live in them. So do they have to abide by the same standards in terms of living conditions and appearance on the outside? Because I don't see that that's being handled.
Well, the unsafe structure is an issue that we're in the process of working through and tightening up those regulations so we can take them to the special magistrate and so forth. But the appearance on the outside, and unfortunately a mobile home can look pretty bad from the outside but still be livable inside. I mean, aesthetically, it's very difficult to cosmetically, you know, make an outside of a mobile home look nice outside of pressure washing it and doing other things with landscaping. But it can be a challenge with mobile homes, and but that we can bring some changes back to you and see if that's something you would like to consider before we take it to the LPA and back to you guys through formal adoption. I
would be in favor of that, but I don't want to hijack Councilwoman Trammell. God, my TRs. But was that your intention? Was that the exterior as well, or?
All of the above.
Okay.
All of the above. A mobile home, by our standards, is one that comes in on wheels. You take the wheels off, you anchor it down, and you put it on a slab. Okay?
Right.
And then again, when you look at some of the mobile homes that are out there, I'm not so sure if we have an inspection method for the anchors. I don't know, you know, I don't know any of that. So those kinds of things would be what I'd be looking at for not only the safety and security of the people living in that, but generally I guess that's the question. Do we want to have this in Destin in 50 years?
Well, I support
That's all I'm asking. And come up with those standards so we can determine whether it's a yes or a no.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Ramswell. Thank you, Ms. Trammell. Is there any further discussion? I think Mr. Casella's kind of got pretty good consensus of the marching order. All right, that's it. Okay, Ms. Trammell, anything else? No. That's it? Okay. I've got a few things tonight. First, Kyron didn't want me to say anything, but it's his birthday tomorrow. Happy birthday, Kyron. You want us to sing happy birthday? No. Where time's cake tomorrow?
I don't know.
All right.
Yeah, there you go.
Can you sing happy birthday to me?
I'll sing it for myself.
All right, fair enough. Kyron's birthday tomorrow. Happy birthday. Second, again, as was mentioned by Ms. Ramswell and Mr. Foreman, and of course Ms. Trammell as well, with the League of Cities this past few days, I think the city can be extremely proud of its representation down at these events. Well-spoken, well-connected, great relationships that we're building. Everyone I talked to that got to meet some of the people from Destin all had extremely complimentary things to say. They don't go there to be just another face in the crowd. They're integrating themselves into the culture, into really the fabric of what's shaping Florida going forward. And so I think on behalf of the city of Destin, we can be extremely proud of Ms. Trammell, Ms. Ramswell, Mr. Foreman, because they're making a difference. I mean, even Ms. Ramswell is vice chair of her committee, now chair, pardon me, because I knew stood up, and then Ms. Trammell is on the board of the Florida League of Cities, and you also got something else while we're down that you stood up for. So these two probably got plenty of knee bend standing up and down in the General Assembly. So I just want to say kudos to them and well done. I'm really honored to be mayor with you guys, and it's awesome. Great job for y'all on that. The other thing is I got to participate I'm on the League of Mayors, and I'm honored to serve in that capacity. And for some reason, they kind of felt upon themselves that they want to put me on their board. So they nominated me and voted me in to be on the League of Mayors Board of Directors for the state, and so that was kind of cool to be doing that, even though they know I won't be there that long, but I guess they'll pull on me whatever I got for the next June, until next June. And lastly is one of the things that Mr. Rayner and Ms. Chabot did on behalf of the city is last year they sent out a request for proposal for development, I guess call them a block grant more than anything. It was for amounts less than $1,500. And Lindy submitted, probably with Lance's help and Lisa Firth's help, at our community center, with our children, we do a community garden for the kids. And one of the things we're trying to do is make that be sustainable throughout the year. And what they needed was $900 to build a 8x8 garden that the kids can not only grow their own vegetables and fruits and things of that nature, but also study them throughout the year and give them away and different things of that nature. And the city, this is the first time they've done it, and Destin was one of 5 cities throughout the whole state of Florida that won that grant. They told me we were the number 1, we're number 2 in terms of dollar amount, but we won the $900 grant. And I know it's not a big amount, but I think it stands out again for something Destin submitted that we earned. And so thanks to staff, congratulations on a job well done. And Destin was recognized for that in the General Assembly of the League of Mayors. I got to go forward and get, it was a fake check, but it wouldn't fit my pockets. They took it back from me, but I tried to bring it back, Mr. Casella, but we'll get the money. Amen. Awesome. Thanks. That's all I have. Next up, staff reports and recommendations. First up, Mr. Miller.
I have no items, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Next up, Mr. Shirley.
I have nothing, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shirley. Mr. Casella, item 17, fee proposal for CEI services for Hutchinson Street pedestrian improvements.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. What you have before you at your last meeting, you ranked Dyer, Riddle, Mills, and Precourt to provide the CEI services for the Hutchinson Street pedestrian improvements, which you had authorized at the last meeting. These are to provide the inspection services. We have done the design in-house, and as a result, FDOT will not allow the city to provide those inspection services. So this outsources that to Dyer, Riddle, Mills, and Precourt in the amount of $79,825. So we'd ask for your authorization of that so that this project, which will be starting pretty soon, will have the engineering services necessary to get it completed, pursuant to the contract. So we'd ask for your authorization of that.
Thank you, Mr. Casella. City Council, is there any direction, motion?
I'll make the recommended motion, Mayor.
Mr. Marlar has the first. Is there a second? I'll second. Mr. Foreman has a second. Is there any discussion?
I need to read a motion.
Read the motion, please, Mr. Marlar.
I move that the council authorize the city manager to execute a contract with DRMP Inc. in the amount of $79,825 for the Hutchinson Street pedestrian improvements CEI.
Mr. Foreman, is that your second? Yes. Okay. We have a first and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, let's call the vote. Motion passed unanimous, 6-0. Great, that project can move along then. That's very important. Next up, item number 18, installation of small cell structures in city rights-of-way. Mr. Casella?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a companion issue to the Southern Light small cell presentation that Mr. Daniels made earlier. You had asked us at a couple meetings ago to bring back some criteria that city staff would be comfortable in recommending to you to allow that these small cells antennas be installed. And if you recall, under the ordinance that we adopted back in the 2000, I think it was in January 2010, it required the city first consider these types of installations before we would allow any private property owners to consider it. So what we are suggesting to you tonight is a couple different things. Is that we would be comfortable recommending that the beach access points that we have both in Crystal Beach as well as in other areas of the city be an appropriate location for these small cell towers. In addition, any pedestrian crossings that we would have that would be lit. And what we're suggesting is that we would have, and it's a fine point, but we'd want them to look like streetlights that happen to have small cell antennas attached to them. I think, as Mr. Daniels said, normally we don't have 30 or 35-foot streetlights. Most of ours are more in that 15 to 20-foot range. We understand that increases the frequency or the number of small cell towers that you need, but aesthetically we think that would be much more appropriate, especially in these residential areas that we have worked so hard to improve the aesthetics. In addition, as Mr. Daniels said, we have given them a list of contact with Destin water users, and they have a number of both well sites and lift station sites scattered throughout the city, probably 40 or 50 or maybe more sites that they have that would may be appropriate for these installations, which would be ideal because they already have, you know, electrical panels and so forth. So what we're recommending to you, and it's really a policy issue, and part of the issue, one of the reasons that we're here is that we have two of these small cell towers, antennas, have been installed in the Crystal Beach area. And you've got some choices about what do you want to do with those. If you want to leave them, if you want to put street lights on them, make them look like street lights, and try to retrofit them to the best of Southern Light's abilities, or do you want to have them replace them with a street light that has small cell antennas on them? Part of the issue is that the equipment that's attached to them, that can be ground mounted versus attached to the poles. So a number of different options here, all with different aesthetic consequences. So we're looking to you to give us some guidance on, do you want them in the right of way? If you do you want them like they have them there, or do you want us to retrofit them to a certain degree or change them out completely? So with that, we would listen for any recommendations that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Casella, and about your write-up, I think y'all did a great job trying to work through all this, but obviously it's up to City Council to decide where we go from this point forward. Mr. Braden, you're up first.
Thank you, Mayor. If we allowed the two poles that are there, does that open the door for everyone else?
You will not be able to discriminate. You'll have, if others come in, you'll have to allow them to come in. And basically, that's why from a policy we've seen, if we would recommend that you allow them at beach accesses and pedestrian walkways, more from a public safety, that they're lit and those types of things. Then you could let them, whoever would be wanted to put the equipment on those streetlights.
So if we went with that, they would have to move the two that they have now to a new location.
If you went with that, they would have to re-engineer and basically come up with a different scheme, a different approach to achieving the same type of coverage as Mr. Daniels talked about before. But the poles are there are specifically engineered for those locations and are acceptable to them. If you change those poles, lower those poles, my understanding is that you're going to have more poles to accomplish the same thing. So that's the consequences of it. You have two poles now, you'll have at least three, maybe four poles if you lower them.
I think before I would feel comfortable doing anything, I'd want to see exactly where on a map, you know, where the staff was proposing putting these, how many crosswalks, whatever, where they would go. I guess we would have to limit, you know, one per crosswalk, or I'd definitely want to see something.
Yeah. We can give you a location of I think we've got 6 or 7 beach accesses in the Crystal Beach area, and it would be on Scenic Highway 98, and then we've got some pedestrian walkovers and crossovers there that, you know, cross Scenic 98, but we could give you a map of those locations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Braden. Ms. Trammell?
In looking at the actual poles that are out there, and as well as what Mr. Daniel showed us earlier, personally, I don't like the wooden poles because I don't think they're aesthetically pleasing, and I think when you look at our redevelopment areas, when we've put up lights, they've been either on metal poles or cement poles or something else besides a wooden pole. And I was real disappointed in the placement of, I guess it's one that really blocks the Gulf view from the north side of the road. I mean, nobody wants to look at a black pole when you're looking at the Gulf of Mexico. I think that's of the utmost importance that we don't block any of our Gulf views for that. Other than that, I'm still having second thoughts, I guess, or with this. I guess the beach access points and the pedestrian crossings basically cover Crystal Beach. Are we talking about any other areas? Are we talking about all beach accesses?
Well, you've got them in the, you've got much more beach accesses in Crystal Beach. You've got, you know, 2 or 3 of them in the center portions of Destin. And then outside of the one at Osteen, we don't have any other city beach access in Holiday Isle. So that would be the limitation. They're looking specifically in the Crystal Beach area because of the hot spot and demand for service, is my understanding.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman, next up, Mr. Marler.
I got a couple of questions. I need to talk to have Mr. Daniels come back up too.
Okay.
I've got a couple of questions for
Is
him.
that okay, Mr. Daniels? Yeah, thank you.
Basically, what the city is, what our staff is asking us to do is say that we'll allow it, but we prefer the light poles versus the poles you have. I know you're probably not the engineer, but what in the aspect of that, of removing the 2 that you have, because they are specifically engineered for that.
Yes, sir.
Can you give me some sort of an idea of how many other poles you would need to do the same thing?
I'd love to be able to tell you that it's a real simple proportion, well, to cover the same amount of areas with poles that are that much smaller than I could do with 3 instead of 2, but when you decrease the height of one of these things, you know, it literally, the city manager had it right, it literally may take 4 to do what 2 were doing before, so.
But they'd be spaced out a little differently possibly than the way they are.
Yeah, it's really hard to engineer an effective solution that perfectly matches beach accesses and pedestrian crossings. You know, I don't know that that's actually possible. So.
And the 2 poles that are there now, what are they manufactured out of?
Those are steel, right? Yeah, galvanized stainless. Yeah, and it's painted green. So.
All right, that's okay for you now.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels.
Staff, if I recall, part of this problem started because we made a boo-boo, or at least staff made a boo-boo, correct?
2 parts. There was they submitted for a right-of-way permit, and we incorrectly authorized that to go in. There was a whole other issues from registration and stuff they were supposed to do that they didn't do, but you are correct that the original right-of-way permits should not have been issued. And as a result,
was that when they submitted their plans initially, or what I'm trying to get across is you both of you have said that they were specifically designed for that particular location. So that's what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, my understanding is the 2 poles that's been installed were specifically designed for that, and I'm calling it a hotspot for service in that particular geographic area. That they needed them to be able to provide reliable, redundant service there.
Okay. And one more question from Mr. Daniel. I'm sorry, since that brought up. Or actually, a couple questions. What was the time frame originally that you had promised Verizon?
We were trying to have it up in late June. Yeah.
Okay, and we've delayed it that long. And secondly, I guess, do you have an objection to what what our staff is proposing with the light poles versus what we got? And if we were to have you remove the ones you got,
we have, like I said, there's many more coming. The question you asked, we have no problem with the city developing a standard, you know, like that, trying to use light poles, that kind of stuff. That sets the parameters for us. We know how to work with that. It may change the actual physics of it. It may not work, depending on the height that it needs to be at. You know, at least we'll have something to go back to the wireless carriers and say, look, this is how you gotta do it here. You know, the challenge may be in the interest of aesthetics, which I completely understand. You know, you may not be able to solve a lot of these problems.
And would you be able to reuse these particular poles in some other area if they were?
We could. I think it's gonna cost us about 15 grand per pole to pull these guys, and try to move them somewhere else, but.
All right. And I guess since technology keeps changing, we're gonna be looking at something else somewhere down the line that's gonna even be different or better than what we have now with the fiber optics and
Yes, sir.
frequencies.
You know, 10 years from now, we could be asking to put something the size of a wristwatch around here. I don't.
That's possible.
That's-
Okay, that's all I had. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
That's all I had, Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Marlar. Next up, Mr. Dixon.
Yes, I certainly do not like where they're placed now, and I'm hoping that we can work out something with the street lights or whatever it is we can work out for the beach accesses or something, but I'm, along with whoever said earlier that basically it's a 30-foot pole and it's probably right in front of a house that takes away from the view, and I think we can expect something that's there that is 20 foot tall or whatever it may be, but the 30 feet thing gets us, and I'm just not in favor of where they're located at presently. So if we could work on that and work on a way to be able to kind of hide them a little bit, I'd be for this.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Ms. Ramswell?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm trying to understand where and what it was supposed to look like as opposed to what's there now. So if somebody could elaborate what height was permitted and allowable as opposed to what is there now?
Yeah, this is, what we are suggesting is, it's a nuance, but it would basically be a 15 to a 20-foot street light that happen to have small cell antenna on it, and the equipment would be basically installed on the ground level instead of attached to that street light. So if you didn't know any different, you would think it was a street light. It has a small cell tower on top of it, but it would look like a street light. It would have lights on it, but aesthetically it would look very much like our current street lights that we would have in other areas of the city.
Right, now I understand that. What is the height of what's there right now? The 30?
30, 33, 34 feet.
So would they chop 10 feet off the
No,
pole? I mean,
no, they would have to
so the-
replace that. It would come
Okay.
up with a total different pole. Now, they can retrofit that.
But
and
it's still gonna be 30 foot, because
It's
that's
still gonna be
what's- if we allow it to
34,
remain.
33, 34 feet high.
Okay, my second question is, was that the location that was permitted and it was supposed to go, or was the location somewhere else?
No, that's, in that, those two precise locations where they permitted it, they installed it in that location.
Okay, so it was just a matter of the size and the materials and such that were not,
Only the city council could authorize the use of the right-of-way. Staff did not have that authorization.
because my concern is, I don't like them there, honestly. I see how they impede a view, they're obtrusive. And especially if we're allowing these two 30-foot poles there now, you know, as we've heard, what's to prevent 3 other companies from coming and putting them right along in a line? And I don't want to see that. So I'm in line with Councilman Dixon that I think we need to move them or have them smaller. I wouldn't have approved them there.
Yeah. I guess what I'm hearing is to work with Southern Lights. Are you okay with the beach accesses, pedestrian crosswalks, as long as the lights are a height of, they look like a street light that has small cell antennas on them?
I am, and I'm curious, I have another question. What is the range of these towers? Are we talking 50 feet, 100 feet, 200 yards? What?
It's a couple of hundred feet depending on how specifically they're designed and how high they go. The lower you drop these things, the smaller an area they're going to cover, thus needing more if they're actually even able to cover that area at a lower height. When you shrink these, then it's a lot harder to do things with what we call the macro, the main cell tower that's powering them. the physics of it may not even work.
Are they line of sight, or are they not line of sight?
They're, each of them are covering specific directions, so. But
Okay.
really, I mean, it's gonna be line of sight just because, these things aren't, they're not microwaving everybody around them. They're very low power. I showed you how little frequency there is out there the wireless guys have to work with. Well, the way that they can deal with that is by lowering the amount of power out that they push with the frequencies that they have. Thus, they're able
Sure.
to reuse those frequencies in more locations. So, I don't know that, I mean, we'll do whatever the council decides, obviously. I can't promise you that there will be a solution that will work there. So, I mean,
Sure, no, I understand. So when we look at city property, because we need to be looking at our right-of-ways or actual city property to place these on, correct? When we look at that, other than our access points, do we have any, what I'm getting at is buildings. Do we have any buildings that have roofs that are anywhere along in there? And what about the bathrooms, like we have at the Hutch access, June Decker? Those would be high points, and we could put a tower on top.
I mean, when we said beach access, those would include those points.
So we could actually, in that instance, instead of placing them on the ground, place them up and out of view, per se.
There is a couple of locations that we actually own the real estate. Some cases, we just have easements and so forth, and, sort of beach access. But, I think we can, and again, I think Southern Lights is gonna have to do some engineering. If this is something that's acceptable to you, then we can give them the locations of our beach accesses and pedestrian walkways, and they can tell us what they're gonna be of the need to be able to provide the same level of service.
Okay, and one last question, I promise I'll stop. I know we're talking a lot about the beach access points, and obviously those are hot spots of traffic. What about back in some of the neighborhoods that are having severe issues, such as Indian Bayou?
yeah, so it's purely an economics issue. They're gonna cover as many people as they can first. But
Sure.
the greatest thing you can do to freak out your wireless carrier is drop a call. If you drop a call somewhere, redial and drop it again as fast as you can. And that'll make some little engineer somewhere go nuts.
That's great,
Right.
'cause it's happening multiple times a day.
Yep,
Call failed, call failed.
yep.
Yeah,
That's what you want.
all right. Thank you
Seen it
very much, I
happen.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Ramshaw. Mr. Foreman?
Yes? Okay. I see this as something that's coming that, with as many people as we have to service in this town, that it's an essential service, public safety service. I think what it comes down to is we're trying to identify those locations which it would be acceptable aesthetically to the city up front, so that we could predetermine where these locations are, so that at that point in time, somebody wants to put a cell tower, that's where you go, or you don't go anywhere else.
Sure.
And I think that would be helpful to both sides of this, to know that. And since you're talking in terms of 10 more, or so many more of these, then to get out the map and start identifying those locations where we will agree to it, and then we can look at an approval or disapproval based upon that one determination. I think that would be helpful to everybody.
Well, the ordinance that was adopted in January 2010 requires the provider to first exhaust public right-of-way, public property, before they go into private. So we can, that's what we're here tonight to talk about, the public property, public right-of-way. And then I think the Destin water users, now that they have a map and you've met with them, there may be some sites there that's available to them. So I think we can come up with a plan now that we know what, that you're willing to accept.
As far as the ones that are currently there, trying to fix those so that they'll work, I think that they're gonna be a problem. We need to determine how we can either make them look like something else or move them somewhere else or do something like that. That's the only code.
I think the challenge that the staff is fighting with as well is that, you make them look like they're a light pole. There's already 4 different kinds of light poles out there, and that within 300 feet.
Maybe
So,
a windmill or something.
sure.
There you go.
That would be great. That's right.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. Ms. Trammell?
I have a question for Mr. Daniel, too. This is my understanding. If you built a 30-foot pole, lights would be up so high, regular standard, whatever the street light height is. And then from then on would be cell tower, and if you were working for multiple companies, you could have multiple companies on the rest of that, 10 feet or whatever that is. Is that correct?
You, off of the same antenna, without changing out an antenna or adding more antennas, you could serve multiple companies. The only thing that would change to add other companies would be more equipment down on the ground or attached to the pole down lower, or, that's, whatever standard the council
Okay,
adopts.
so if we lower the poles, then lower the total height of the pole, then we're going to have them about every 200 feet as a possibility versus every, how many feet if they're 30 feet?
Right, so.
How many feet apart would they need to be if they're 30 feet?
Well, it depends. There's no perfect answer to that, but you're hitting on something that is true. Every wireless carrier's coverage is different, regardless of if they're all on the same cell tower or not, because they're on different frequencies. They can travel different ranges and has different atmospheric effects. So if you need to shrink them, then you do run the likelihood that a wireless carrier will come along and want to put more of these out there than just saying, okay, there's an existing 30-foot, I could go right there.
All right, in your humble opinion, could all the carriers you work with be on one pole?
So yes, the antennas that we have up there right now have basically 4 ports to them. So you could fit 4 wireless carriers on that. And believe me, there's some that aren't even thinking about doing this.
Well, I understand that, but I'm also trying to reduce the number of poles if we elect to go that direction. I think we need to know taller means less, shorter means more.
That's a very...
Is that
You are
true?
correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Trammell. City Council, is there any more discussion, direction, staff? Mr. Casella?
I think I understand what you want, so.
Okay. Mr. Daniels, I appreciate your presentation. Again, I think and I appreciate your willingness to work with staff. I think for us, as you heard, is we need a standard that we stand for, that so that no one else, you or anyone behind you, doesn't know what to expect, so that if you come, there's a standard. So we've got to raise that up, and I appreciate your patience with us, and we'll get it worked out. And if you continue to work with Mr. Casella, it would be outstanding.
Yes, sir. I appreciate the time. You guys have spent a heck of a lot of very valuable time to look at this. This is the one opportunity you're going to have to fix your cell coverage, right. From your cell carrier. So we appreciate you taking the time to address that.
Well, we appreciate your time as well. Take care of William. I got to watch that guy over there now.
Very hard.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Mr. Dan. Appreciate you coming out. Mr. Casella, anything else on that subject?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next up, item number 19, Okaloosa County Centennial Celebration. Mr. Rainer, you doing that, Mr. Casella, or who's got this one?
We're gonna finally get a little work out of Doug here, so he's gonna talk about it.
Thanks, Greg. Mayor and council, about February, March of 2014, I was asked by the Okaloosa County Public Information Officer, Kathy Newby, to serve on a Okaloosa County Centennial Committee with a large number of other members, and that included county staff, the college staff, we had local media, Okaloosa County Sheriff's Office was involved in this, museums, local chambers, and the other municipalities in the county. The idea was to, and you're all well aware that this year is the centennial for the county, and to figure out a way, not just to help celebrate that, but to show off what this county has done in the last 100 years, where it's come, and a lot of things have changed. This game seems fairly simple considering we've met for so long, and there are other things that have taken place throughout the year, you've seen in the paper, probably somewhat affiliated with our committee, but Elizabeth Spees with the Chamber and myself represented Destin, and the group came up with a game to experience Okaloosa. And as you see, the game idea is to move people through the county. Each municipality could select 5 locations, things, events that they thought were important to them to show off what they've done over the years. And as you see in our section, Destin, based on a lot of input, thought the fishing rodeo, the seafood festival, the city's open house, which gives some insight to the history of the city of Destin, the fishing museum, and then something that's a little different as the old Crystal Beach Pier, were things that were unique to the city. And several of these have been around for a very long time. So the idea is, luckily, the Daily News has partnered with us to print a board that will be a game board. And what you do, and actually we were expecting it to be printed in the next couple of weeks. It has to be printed before September 7th. So contestants, and the contestants are any public, you can take the game board that's printed free in the paper and take it and you visit as many of these locations as you can. You get a stamp for each place you go to. The city of Destin has stamps set up for all of ours except for the Crystal Beach Pier, which is you have to go there and count how many pilings are left on the sand and make that notation. When this game concludes on November 11th, you can turn these into the chambers, the cities, or the Fort Walton Beach Chamber is actually heading this effort up. And you'll be entered into a prize to win, or a raffle to win a prize. And you do have to complete all of the locations, so it will take some effort. But again, the idea is to move people through the community and understand what's been built here over the years. I can tell you that the prize package is in the tens of thousands of dollars. There's so many people who have donated to this project to make it something special. That's why you have to complete the whole thing to get into the raffle. So it's been a great experience. We appreciate our chamber, I do anyway, Elizabeth and the Destin Area Chamber of Commerce, to partner and work with the county and the other entities to do this. Be looking for the game board to come out in the next couple of weeks. If I get a sample of that beforehand, I'll share it with you. But it should be really fun. It's 100 years is a big deal, and we're glad to be a part of it.
Mr. Andrew, thanks a lot for doing that. And of course, Mr. Moody, thanks for donating Elizabeth to help out as well for such an amazing event that honors the history and heritage of our county. So I love that you brought in definitely the history and heritage of our city into that game, and I appreciate what y'all are doing to make it special. Ms. Ramsell, I saw your light. Did you have something to say, or I know you knocked it off. Okay, good.
You essentially just said what I was going to say.
Oh.
Great idea. Fantastic.
Great. Thank you.
It wasn't my idea, but I'm glad to be a part of it.
So is Ms. Spee's idea? It's Shane's idea?
Yes, it was Shane's idea.
Perfect, of course.
Good for you, Shane.
Thanks, Shane.
It's way too complicated.
Yeah. Oh, man. Oh, man. Man, my goodness. Whoa, it's tough. All right, next up, item number 20, first reading of ordinance 15-06-CN, refinancing the bond series. I know Mr. Miller is not able to participate. Mr. Bailey will be reading it by title, but Mr. Miller, do you need to publicly say something?
Mr. Ponder, can we call in our attorney real quick?
Yes, please, that's right, Webb. I'm sorry about that.
For the record, I do not represent the city in public finance issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Before you read the ordinance, Mr. Bailey, please wait till we get the other folks on the line. Maybe we're not refinancing the note.
It's Dwayne Draper.
Hey, Dwayne, this is Bragg. We're just going to put you on hold, and if there's any need for discussion, we'll punch back through to you.
Did he hear
Thank you, Bragg.
Okay. Did you get you? Okay. Can you, perfect. Is that the best we can do with that, Webb? That's okay if it is. We can get through it. Okay, that's fine. All right, Mr. Bailey, please read the ordinance by title.
Ordinance 15-06-CN. It's an ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida, authorizing the issuance of a non-ad valorem refunding revenue note, Series 2015A, of of the city in the principal amount of not to exceed $5,500,000 to refund certain outstanding obligations of the city and to pay associated transactional costs, providing that the note shall be a limited obligation of the city payable from non-ad valorem revenues budgeted and appropriated as provided herein, providing for the rights, securities, and remedies for the owner of the note, making certain covenants and agreements in connection therewith, and providing an effective date.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Mr. Casella, anything to add to that, or Mr. Farmer?
Now, this is basically the refinancing of the 2005B League of Cities. As we've said in the memorandum, just over the remaining 14 years, it saves us about almost $1 million in interest costs. So we would
Love it.
ask
Yeah.
your support of that.
Great. Ms. Trammell, you're up first.
Mayor, I'd like to make the motion. I move that council approves ordinance 15-06CN on first reading and schedule the second reading for September the 8th, 2015.
Ms. Ramswell? Ms. Ramswell in the second? Okay, Mr. Dixon has a second. Okay, Ms. Ramswell, do you have any discussion? Or no? Any discussion? Okay. All right, well, we have a first by Ms. Trammell, second by Mr. Dixon. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, let's call the vote. Motion passed unanimous, 6-0. Mr. Farmer, thank you again. Man, I love that this year we've been able to refinance some notes and it's saving the city a ton of money, millions. Yeah, it's awesome. God.
While we're on that issue, we are in the final stages of working with Trustmark to the Harbor CRA. We have outstanding debt of about $5.7 million. That had an acceleration that would, the Trustmark could set in 2019, and we're currently paying 4.2% for that money, and they've agreed to go ahead and accelerate it now, and we would get, they proposed interest rates of 2.82, so that saves us quite a bit of money, and that's pursuant to the agreement that we have with them. So it's.
Is that, are we locked at that rate?
We're preparing to lock that rate and bring that refinancing back to you, but that's just an acceleration of that. The current terms, which they're allowed to do 19, and we said that we would go back out to the market, and they said, no, don't do that. Let us refinance.
That's job security, Mr. Farmer. Look at all this, man. That's a long time. You're all set.
Yeah, he's running out of he's running out of debt to refinance.
But you will, but I tell you, in 14 years, 15 years, almost all the debt the city currently holds will be retired.
I know that's the exciting part to me, is we'll be debt,
highest,
not debt totally, but elimination. And I want to get chiseling that stuff down so we can, I mean, it's going to be a good day. Excellent. Okay, Actually, Casella, you're up next, number 21.
We didn't.
No, we didn't vote. Gosh, I'm sorry. I thought, yeah, we did. It was unanimous.
Did
Passed the 6-0,
Okay,
unanimous.
that's
Yeah.
fine. All right, quickly, I had passed out the agenda for tomorrow. The Triumph Gulf Coast, Inc. Is meeting tomorrow, their organization meeting. They're meeting at the Sandestin Resort from 9 to noon. This is the group that is looking at the amount of money that has been segregated from the BP oil spill. They're at $1.5 billion, and there's specific criteria how that will be allocated. We do have, of the 5-person board, 3 of those individuals have either reside here in Destin or closely aligned with Destin, so that at least should give us a sympathetic ear as we talk about potential, funding strategies with them. But as with the ORAC, the Okaloosa County Resource Advisory Committee, Restore Advisory Committee, they've gone through this meeting on their organization, electing chairs and talking about how they're going to go about establishing the criteria and putting a priority on how they're going to fund all these different projects. But my understanding is the first installment, about $300 million, comes in the early part of 16. So this is where the big bucks are coming in. So we've got that tomorrow. Appreciate your patience last Tuesday on the Envision Destin. I think Mr. Bailey reached out to you about, a workshop with Canaan and city staff. Based on the direction you gave last Tuesday, they're going to take that, memorialize that in the Chapter 1 rewrite, as well as the Land Development Code, and then bring that back to you for your final nod on October the 12th. That's the second Monday in October. If it's acceptable, we would then schedule it before the LPA on November the 5th, and then back to you for first reading on November 16th before Thanksgiving, and then get it to the state of Florida by the end of the year, hopefully so that we can get the second final completed in the January timeframe. So that's what we're targeted. We know it was a long, tedious meeting last week. We appreciate your patience with that, but it was very helpful for Canaan, very helpful for city staff to understand what your expectations are. We'll now make those changes and put them into Chapter 1 and subsequently into the Land Development Code, and then bring that back to you. So, unless I'm seeing any disagreement, that's what we're planning to do. So, and the last, we'll meet again after tonight on September the 8th. We are closed on September the 7th, and that will be our first budget hearing. So that's all I have, Mayor.
The third quarter financial report.
Third quarter.
I'm sorry, we got the financial report. We've given you the third quarter. We have representatives from Raymond James here as it relates to our investment results. If you have any questions for them, you had asked us to look at doing some diversification of our investment funds, and we've met with them a couple weeks ago. They suggested a couple different products. If you recall, our investment policy at this point requires that we, for the most part, do high-grade, what I call bonds and debt instruments. With that becomes pretty safe investments, but relatively small yields. One of the criticisms of it is that when you have almost 100% of your investments in one particular portion of the market, you take some market risk from that standpoint. So they've introduced to us a couple different products that would diversify the investment strategy a little bit. And I think all of us are comfortable in recommending about 20% of this fund, which would be about $2 million. And it would be a product that would be about either 60% equities or 50% equities is another product. Still put us 90% in the debt and bonds and 10% in equities, but it would give us a little bit more diversity, a little bit more risk, but potentially a little bit more reward. So I don't know if you have any heartburn with that. If not, we need to amend our investment policy to accomplish that, but we think we could get a little bit more return for diversification. But again, I would caution everybody, with that return goes potential risk. This is still, very conservative, compared to, some of these retirement funds or 401s or those types of things. Most of those are 60% equities, 40% debt, 70% equities, 30% debt, depending on your age. But this would still be 90% debt, 10% equities. So we'd ask for your concurrence on that, and if that's something you would be agreeable with, we would then bring that back to you for your suggestion.
Mr. Dixon?
I was just going to ask a question, was basically, have we checked to make sure that these are legal through the state as far as investments?
Yeah, we would do that, and then we do have to amend our investment policy to allow us to make that investment.
So if we do, then it would be legal?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Mr. Trammell?
I could support your proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Trammell. Yeah, I just, I don't mind putting it so that we have the flexibility. Obviously, preservation of capital, yield are important, and just, making sure it's something that has got a very consistent track record, it's solid, large cap, stable, something maybe with a solid dividend as well, things that we can look at. But we can, obviously, I don't mind if it's there to give us the option, but as long as it still comes back for us to make that decision, or them, I should say.
Yeah, this is a very, very difficult market.
Yeah.
This year to make any money. I mean, it's whether or not you're in the equity side or you're in the debt side or some hybrid. It is just a very difficult, you know, the 2014, 13, 12 was a little easier. This is, the market's been pretty jumpy all throughout the year, clearly all throughout the summer. So that's why we're a little reluctant to do too much, especially in the equity, but having 100% in the debt, you know, bond issues is also creating, you know, risk, and that's why we want to diversify a little bit.
Thank you, gentlemen from Raymond James. Appreciate you coming out and sitting in the back. Doing good. We have seats up front if you'd like. No, you're good. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Casella. Mr. Farmer, you have some other reports on the third quarter, or nope, we're good? Everybody's good? Okay. Any questions for Mr. Farmer on the third quarter update? No. Good. Thanks so much. Appreciate it, Mr. Farmer. Excellent. Okay, that closes that out. Last up, comments from the audience. Anyone, member of the audience, wish to speak against or for whatever you want to? Please come forward. Ms. Bell? Mr. Wu?
Good evening, Walter Wu. I live in Crystal Beach, and Crystal Beach is the corner point of Destin. That's what defines Destin. And as pointed out earlier, the only way to get to the beach is public access. The public accesses are in Crystal Beach. And I agree with the council that the cell towers not mar the view that we have. There is a cell tower, I think it's a cell tower on Sunfish and Scenic Highway 98. It's a small tower, it's hidden by trees. I'm not really sure if it is a cell tower, but if the cell towers can be of that size and surrounded by trees, you can barely see this thing. So anyway, that's my suggestion. Second is, I have an issue with the fire department funding. Money's coming out of, to fund the fire department. And I think we should get some help from the TDC.
That's where we're doing.
Okay.
Our motion was to send a letter to them endorsing funding. That's
well,
not us.
I think the director is here, so I'm making a point.
Oh, sorry.
That with the amount of tourists that we're getting, and the other thing is I think we need to expand our view of this issue. You've got a fireboat, it's a very expensive piece of equipment. The pilot is a very highly paid individual, just like the paramedics and EMT. There's a lot of equipment on this boat. To be on that side, and the marina is on the other side, that boat's going to have to transverse back. And any marine fires that has this fuel on the water is very dangerous. Once that fuel gets on top of the water, it doesn't sink. It stays on top and it spreads. If we can think of a way to get a second rescue vehicle that would free up the fireboat, and I believe you said the TDC, this is going into effect next year. Not just next year, but for ensuing years. I think we would be better served by that particular, by a separate rescue service there. I know I'm talking more money, but the way I've seen Crab Island grow, it's grown from a nice little idea to this big, humongous 4 structures now on the water. And I think those are restaurants. They're unpermitted restaurants, and they've already closed one. But now we've gone from little boats with restaurants and food to structures. And how much bigger is this going to be? Crab Island sits in the middle of the waterway. To get from one place to another, you have to come through Crab Island. So as this Crab Island idea grows, it's still unregulated. How are the boats going to get through? Well, it's just a thought. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I appreciate your concerns and letting the public speak and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wu. Appreciate your time. Ms. Moore, Ms. Bell? Ms. Bell?
Hi, I'm Marcy Bell, if you don't already know me. Oh, I don't even know how to start this out. So, I was gonna start out with answering Mr. Marlar's request for topography on the hole, what we call the death hole on East Pass. But because there's been so much discussion tonight about this, I'm gonna bring this up first. The only person or group that controls Crab Island is the National Park Service. For anybody who doesn't know that, it lies within the Gulf Islands National Seashore, and it's the very east boundary of that. I have documents here for all of you. Florida side, Destin, larger.
You want to hand those out?
There's two for everyone.
Did you have one extra copy for Mr. Bailey?
Yes,
Okay.
I believe so. If not, I can get one. So with that said, there's been a lot of energy expanded on this. I haven't followed a lot of it because I started getting involved in the city more recently than last. I'm not sure why other people don't know this, but the Park Service was established. This particular, not Park Service, excuse me, this particular National Seashore was established in 1971. It was all-encompassing, so this part has not been added later. President Nixon signed it into law on January 8th of 1971. Let's see if my notes are here. It was done through House Bill 10874 and made public law number 91660 on that date. This particular park is 134,000 acres approximately, with 2/3 of it located underwater. So while everybody sits up here, state, city, county, and argues about who has jurisdiction, I think it's time that you look to the National Park Service. On another note, and I know you guys think that I'm on a witch hunt, but I'm gonna just point it out. Approximately 9 years ago, Peter Boss applied for trademark of the name Crab Island. So if there's anybody out here who believes that he's not trying to take over your public lands, federal, county, state, and city parks that belong to all of us, not me, not him, all of us, then you are mistaken. I have copies of that. I have one of this for everyone. The actual owner of that trademark is Legendary Incorporated, and Legendary Incorporated's president, as of current record with the state, is Peter Boss is the president. Wendy Parker is the secretary. Bruce Crowell is the vice president, and Pete Knowles is also the vice president. I also have copies of those documents for you. This is also It's my humble opinion that it's time for the city of Destin to stop listening to a man who wants to take over our public lands. He sits on Holiday Isle. He is sitting on state lands. Those documents have been pulled. There's county, state records. That's conservation land. I don't know how it all happened, but that's conservation land. He was out at Noriega Point. It was county property. Then it became city park. He was out there. He went over across the way over to the, well, it's actually National Seashore also, but the Air Force, and he was there for 3 days. I can't help that all fingers point back to this gentleman taking over our public lands. But I'm a conservationist, and I'm gonna stand up for it, and you're gonna hear from me over and over and over again. That's all I have to say about that. I don't know if you have questions, because I have another issue that was the one that I was going to address originally.
Council, do you have any questions, Mr. Dixon, of what she's presented?
Yes.
Okay, please.
From what I'm seeing here, it doesn't mean he's trying to take Crab Island. It means he's trying to fill out some sort of a business license to sell clothing? I mean, is that what I'm thinking?
That's not a trademark is. A trademark is he's trying to take over anybody else being able to use the name Crab Island. That's what he's trying to do. That is what he has done. He has succeeded in getting the trademark and preventing anybody else from using the name Crab Island. Crab Island is a geographical location. He cannot trademark Destin. He cannot trademark Florida. He cannot trademark a geographical location. That is a geographical location. It's been known as Crab Island since before I got here.
Mr. Miller?
Council, from time to time, you'll have someone that'll have a mission that'll appear before you. I want you to be very careful to distinguish between a personal pronoun and an impersonal pronoun. A personal pronoun does not apply to a corporate entity. And so in your responses, if any, and since this is fresh, I would expect perhaps you won't have any until you've had an opportunity to review this newfound perspective. But be very cautious, please, regarding asserting positions and statements regarding an individual as alleged when, as I understand, what you're looking at is some corporate action. I just want you to be protective of yourselves and of the city. Thank you.
Yeah, and absent Mr. Miller, thank you. And obviously, Mr. Boss isn't here to either.
And
so I don't want to, yeah.
I actually expected that he would be here, and I would have said the same exact thing.
And I understand. I just don't want it to become a personal,
I understand.
Okay.
That's fine. I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that all this hoopla and brouhaha over Crab Island has really been a moot point and wasted time and energy because it's not governed by anybody but the National Park Service. All the way to the point of Noriega Point, over to the eastern boundaries to the end of Noriega Point.
Thank you. Mr. Braden?
I just had a question if Mr. Shirley knew if that was the case on this National Park Services, if that's who has jurisdiction out there. I've been told it's been the Fish and Wildlife. And
We have talked to them. We've talked to the National Park Service, and that was as part and parcel of investigating what to do about commercial businesses being run at Crab Island. And my recollection is that in their opinion, they did not have jurisdiction over Crab Island after investigating it. So there was a little initial confusion, and they got back with us subsequently and told us they did not have jurisdiction. So that's what did not.
The National Park Service said they do not.
They, last summer.
I believe it was last July, there was a
A year ago, July.
Yeah, a year ago in 14, there was a meeting called by all of the potential parties that may have jurisdiction over Crab Island. And outside of the county in the state of Florida, they were the only ones that asserted that they had jurisdiction over it. State of Florida, actually, it was submerged land. You heard Representative Gates said that when he came to the town hall meeting. And the county, because it is part of the unincorporated area of the county, had jurisdiction from a land use zoning standpoint, but neither the federal agency exerted, any control over Crab Island. So that was I wasn't here yet, but my understanding that meeting was in July of 2014. The Coast Guard, all these state and federal agencies, local agencies came together to try to get their hands around some of the behavioral issues as well as the different businesses that were operating out on Crab Island.
So they don't have jurisdiction in any of this green area that's outlined in the National Park Services, or just in the submerged land?
On the state or the feds?
Whoever this National Park Services.
My understanding, the feds exerted, they did not have any jurisdiction at the time. But this was in July of 2014.
Who did have jurisdiction at that time?
It was the state of Florida because it was submerged lands that they own, and that was confirmed when it was considered to annex that into the city. And Representative Gates said that was submerged land, and they had jurisdiction over it, and they would have a say in whether or not it got annexed. And then the county, because it is part of the unincorporated area, and the county had actually considered adopting some land use regulations dealing with some of the commercial activities that were going on Crab Island.
So I think.
Thanks, Ms. Ramswell.
Is this information that you have, I'm understanding it's pretty new? I mean, you just,
Oh, yes, I've been on the phone with the National Park Service. I've been on the phone with the Seashore. That's not what they're telling me. I've not heard any of that. They say they've never been a part of a meeting. They haven't said that. They've implied that they didn't even know about meetings. They were asking me if I knew about any meetings that they could attend.
would you be willing to share your contact with our land attorney? Because I think this is important.
He's the supervisor, Superintendent Dan Brown, if you've spoken to him. His name's Dan Brown. He's over at I think he's in the Florida office over in Gulf Breeze.
Because obviously I think this is an issue that's very important. We're all on the same page. So if y'all could.
I just don't, I called the Park Service the other day for some information because I wasn't able to find it. And while the gentleman was talking to me on the phone, not Dan Brown, but another gentleman, because it was on Saturday, I mean, he said, do you realize that we have 135,000 acres of land, whatever I had quoted a minute ago, 134,000 acres, but 2/3 of it's underwater? Well, if 2/3 of it's underwater, then how are we talking about submerged land leases and things like that if they're not talking to the National Park Service? The city, the county, the state, they don't have any jurisdiction. The jurisdiction lies within the National Park Service.
Absolutely, which is all the more reason I think it's important for everybody to get on the same page, and maybe Mr. Shirley, if you can reach out to the individuals she's spoken with so that
we'll make
we can get some clarity.
contact. Yeah, we'll make contact with the National Park Service again and check into it.
Nope.
Yeah. No, Ms. Ramsey was up. She was up next.
Okay.
You're next after her. Yeah. You're fine. No, you're fine. You're still at the floor. Then Mr. Foreman when he's done. Are you done?
I'm finished.
Okay, then Mr. Foreman.
You know, time after time, we get in lengthy discussions over jurisdictions that are not in the city of Destin. And it does us very little good. We were elected to take care of the business of the city of Destin.
Exactly.
Exactly. Okay, now health and safety and public safety is an issue to us, and we're going to participate in that. But whether or not we're talking about submerged lands in a national forest or something doesn't seem to be very relevant to us.
Thank you, Mr. Foreman. Anyone else? Okay, Ms. Bell, do you have something else?
So my whole point of bringing this forward is because it is about the safety. All of this is about the safety. She talked about the safety in the very beginning of it. All I was trying to say was, as someone was making a statement here that it was submerged lands and it was under this and under that, it all belongs to the National Park Service. That's all I was trying to say, and it is about safety. It is about the 2 people that drowned, the gentleman who became paralyzed, all the stats that she gave earlier in reference to the numbers that have come out from the fire department. It is about that. I mean, but I didn't want to go into all that because it's already been said.
Exactly, it's already been said, and my point is that we get in these discussions without preparation, without having seen anything on it, and we're talking about something for which we can make no decisions tonight.
Oh, I wasn't asking.
No, I know, and I'm glad that you gave Mr. Shirley, Mr. Brown's name so that they can do the part they need to with that.
All right.
Okay, you said you had something else?
Yes.
Okay.
This is in reference to Mr. Crowell's map that he provided and said that the location of the hole has been on a map. So I'll wait for all of you to have a copy of it and then I'll discuss it. And I'm sorry, I would have brought this to the last meeting, but I was not here. I was with my daughter preparing for high school. Okay, what you have in front of you on the left-hand side is the map that Mr. Crowell provided to you, stating that the death hole was marked by the 20 that was circled. And I'd like to point out that this is a nautical chart for marking channel depths, and it's my understanding that any boat captain would know that's what this is. West Marine told me what it was, so that's how I knew. So then I went up and pulled up the most recent Google satellite map that I could find, and it was dated 3/28 of 2013, which happens to be when the Emerald Grand was still down on Noriega Point, but neither here nor there. If you look at the placement of the 20 on the left-hand side and where it's actually located, it's that 20 that I have marked in red in front of the condominiums. That is a channel that's a 20-foot marked channel. So, there's... So when we talk about the hole, we've had the hole measured. You guys received that information from one of the gentlemen from a previous meeting. I just wanted to follow up with Mr. Marler's request for topography, and this was I had suggested it, but I went ahead and brought it.
Okay, Mr. Marler has a question. Mr. Marler?
My initial question was, I wanted topography on every area, not just that area, all around the harbor. Because on this map and on any other map you see, if it's dark, it's deep. There is a depth problem. That's my situation. I have a precarious position. I am employed by a business that person you're referring to owns. I don't have direct contact with him. I get a paycheck, I do my job. Somebody else wants to hire me, that's fine. But to be back to the safety issue, your people keep making it site specific. Okay? This council cannot go site-specific. If we do something, we have to do it for the entire area. And that's the problem that we have. You show a 20-foot hole here, but there's another 20-foot hole maybe about, there could be another 20-foot hole 30 foot down the road that's just as dangerous as this 20-foot hole. Or a 10-foot hole or a 5-foot hole, or as Mr. Foreman said before, you can drown in 3 inches of water. It doesn't matter about where it's at, but if we're going to do something as a council, we can't be site-specific, because then we, the city, risk the chance of getting in a lot of legal trouble that we don't want to be in, and that's something that we don't want the taxpayers to have to pay for.
Right.
So if you were to take it from the jetties all the way around into the harbor, because I look at it every weekend, I see boats parked on the harbor side who are that run their motors, dig it deeper, that are just as dangerous as the area that you're talking about. And if you go down a few more yards, you got the same problem all the way down. People beaching their boats in the T-groin area. People beaching their boats all the way around. That's my whole point.
I understand.
I have no problem if it was not site specific, and it has nothing to do with who I work for or where this property is. But for this council to do it, or for me to do it with a clear conscience, if I'm to do this area, I want to look at the entire area for safety, not just one specific area. And that's the whole point that I've been trying to make the whole time. If you were not site-specific, it would be a whole lot easier for me, for this council, to do something if it needs to be done, because safety is the main issue. And I mean, and I can go back into history. There's not a boat captain in here who hasn't used their prop wash to make their dock area big enough for their boat to get into because of the way the sediment comes. So the prop wash, that's going to happen no matter where. So that's the main point I've been trying to get across is, do not make anything site-specific. Do not bring up a name or names. Be generalized in what you want and make it for the entire safety of the city, not just one area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marler.
As I recall, this whole conversation started with Mr. Crowell coming up to this council and talking about an incident that happened on the beach on July 4th. And that put us into a position to start talking. And I'm going to talk.
Thank you,
These are also maps. These are maps, these are satellite maps. When a boat digs a large enough hole that it can be seen from a satellite,
Ms. Bell.
and it's by both of them, both of these are in 2 different locations made by the same boat, then that's what's happening here. This is a state map. This shows the particular hole that we're discussing. This is actually from the same map that I gave you, dated 2013, and here's the same exact hole, looks exactly the same, and where does it sit? Right and by those blue umbrellas down at Noriega Point on March the 28th, 2013, before the city asked him to leave.
That hole no longer exists because that T-groin has been completely rebuilt.
Okay, I want to I don't want to get into a lock and horn deal, but Ms. Ramsell, you're first, then Ms. Trammell.
Actually, I'm not sure where to start because that looks significantly more interesting. My takeaway from this is the image on the left, which I think we all received via email, had a circle of 20, around 20 foot, which was being stated that that was the depth of the hole, and it's been there forever.
Right.
But obviously that's not the case when you look over, because that's the channel. The hole itself is closer to the shore. Is that, am I understanding your presentation correctly?
The hole is,
On this map, there isn't a hole.
that's right, because this is a 2013, because they were up
Got
here
it.
in this hole. They were up here. The hole that we talk about is right here.
Certainly. Okay, I just
Mayor,
wanted to make
point
sure
of
I had a
order.
clear understanding.
I think we have already established that the underwater land is of no jurisdiction to the city of Destin. And just as she stated earlier, we've spent a lot of time discussing something we have no jurisdiction over. So I am moving that we end the discussion, please.
I have one last document.
Okay, we've got first and a second on that. I do, I mean, obviously, I appreciate the work you put into it, and I think that the staff should be recipient of this. I mean, Mr.
I have
Crowell,
one
they're
last-
not here to say
This
anything.
isn't a handout, it's just one last statement.
Okay, well, is it about,
This is your permit form from the city of Destin for beach vendors, beach permits, whatever it is.
Okay.
You may not have jurisdiction over the water, but you have jurisdiction on those items. And number 6 and 8 specifically on this form that they have to fill out with the city of Destin. And on number 8, in bold italicized letters, it says, well, I'll read the whole thing and then I'll tell you that. It says, the applicant or vendor agrees and confirms that the written agreement with the affected beachfront property owner specifies the location of the goods and services for which this beach vendor permit is required. Italicized in bold. For those located from the tip of the south side of the entrance of the Destin Harbor, south and then eastward to the Walton County line. The location of the goods and services shall not be closer than 20 feet to the water's edge.
I think that Mr. Shirley has already
Thank you.
researched that. Okay, thank you, Ms. Bell. Okay. Anyone else? Ms. Moore? Oh, wait, I guess we do, well, it's already been. Yeah, thanks. Ms. Moore?
Lee Moore, representing Howard Group. Thank you all. Bear with me just a minute. I think this will be very quick. You can probably guess I'm here to talk about the small cell structures. Just want to say that we request that the council not vote to add any additional clutter to our streets and right-of-ways. And in listening to the discussion earlier, it kind of felt to me like, or sounded to me like, trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. Because while there may be some safety concerns and there are some service concerns, these structures seem to go against the city's direction to get rid of clutter, to underground as much as we can. So I think after hearing all that was said earlier, our caution is to be very careful about this. The gentleman spoke, Mr. Daniels, and said that there are more on the way. I think you have to think about the future, 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line. This particular spot, he said, is very high density, a lot of people there. Think about how many of those other spots we already have and that we could have in 5, 10, 15 years. That could get very prolific. And I like the direction that sounds good to limit the locations and to require that they are aesthetically pleasing. I would just recommend that this council, before you approve anything, I like what Mr. Braden said, wanted to see a map of where these could be. Also, I would want to see photos of exactly renderings of whatever it is, Photoshop, they can do it, that would show exactly what these look like. Because, you know, service is important, but so is the direction and the vision of a city that a city is trying to take. And it just only makes sense. I wanted to let you know that this company, the same company, attempted to install 6 of these poles, I would assume similar to the ones on in Crystal Beach, along the frontage of Silver Sands Premium Outlets. And I know that's in Walton County, but I bring this up because there was never any communication with Mr. Howard or Howard Group. The Howard Group spent lots and lots of money in the past to underground the utilities in front of that development. And so luckily, the Florida Department of Transportation, since it was their right-of-way, declined their request for a permit. But we only knew about this because somebody that got involved in the process was nice enough to let us know about it. We were never approached. So you would have had 6 of these poles along that right-of-way that has been cleaned up and that Howard Group maintains on an ongoing basis. So I just wanted to let you know that that's the kind of thing that can happen. And we would recommend that the City of Destin decline their request, just like FDOT did. Property owners, you know, that was a large development. We spent a ton of money, but as was mentioned earlier, I think Mr. Casella said, property owners are spending a lot of money. The city's spending a lot of money to really upgrade the face of the city everywhere that we can, and property owners with their property. So, you know, there could be no turning back. I mean, I think you have to look, as I said, to the future. It's not just Scenic 98. There are a lot of other areas these things could go. These 2 poles that are existing, you know, they have to double the number to make them look like something that doesn't look like what they are, then maybe that's worth it. Again, I would just recommend that you see photos or pictures of exactly what anything would look like. And surely it wouldn't look anything like a lot of the pictures that were in that presentation that go in other areas, or that have gone in other areas. You know, and I don't know, what if the areas they need these poles are not in good, in a beach access or in a pedestrian crossing? I like the idea of getting some lighting out of it. I really think that's smart and a smart way to do it, but the gentleman himself said that that may make this unworkable and may make it not work. I also think about, in the long term, if you have sporadic placement of these things, typically when you do street lighting, there's a very, you know, planned way to do that, and it's consistent, and this could end up being pretty sporadic. So I just urge you to really take a lot of caution, and as you're doing already, ask a lot of questions, because I think this is much more important than it even seems, especially when you look at 10, 20 years down the line.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Mr. Marlowe had a question. Mr. Marlowe?
You stated that apparently, I guess, the Walton County was going to allow them in front of y'all's property, or they were proposing it or something like that. Now, do you propose that what we should look at is also make sure that if it happens to be not on just public property, but that public property borders a private property, that we should make sure that we check with the property owner also if they have an objection? Is that what you're kind of suggesting?
I wasn't suggesting that, but I don't think that's a bad idea. But let me just clarify. It wasn't, Walton County never got involved because it was on DOT right-of-way.
Okay.
And Walton County didn't have, so they went to DOT for the permit. DOT turned them down. And so it wasn't on private property. But Mr. Howard had spent funds to improve the right-of-way, the public right-of-way, not even his property, just to enhance the appearance of the development that it was in front of. So that, but I do have concern. I mean, all of you've seen the pictures of, you know, people viewing these 30-foot tall, I guess they're dark green poles, right out the front of their property where they used to have a fairly unobstructed view of the Gulf. So I think it could be quite a mess, but I would suggest that the property owners should be involved to some degree, if you're gonna even do this. That's why I say it sounds like a square peg in a round hole to me.
Okay.
Really tough to make it work.
That was my question.
Right,
and
thank
still
you,
end up with something that looks good.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Moore.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.